Welcome to International Love Story, a podcast about long distance and multicultural relationships. My name is Christina, some of you might know already, so welcome back again. And I am sitting here in our camper van. As some of you might know, we are going to travel for 1 year through Europe in a camper van, and we're super excited for that. It feels so good. Feels like getting the freedom back, and feels just so right. Like we were waiting for this to happen for so long. But anyway, obviously this is not what this podcast episode is going to be about today. Just wanted to share some news with you guys before heading into the conversation. Because today's conversation is a talk that, even though if it's a very serious topic we're going to talk about, you sense a lot of positivity as well. Because I'm going to talk to Silvia. Silvia is describing herself as a chameleon, and I think that's just the perfect word for her. She is an amazing woman. She is really positive thinking. And she's married to a guy from Yemen. So today's conversation is not only going to be about how Silvia and Aiman got to know each other. It's also going to be about paperwork, but in a completely different sense. It's an incredible story, so you definitely have to listen to the story. It's about paper that traveled thousands of kilometers. It's about the civil war in Yemen. It's about how she is supporting her husband, but it's also about the culture, the Yemen culture. It's about so many different topics. We talked for more than 2 hours, and I really enjoyed talking to Silvia. So let's just directly jump into the conversation. Thank you so much for your time. So, Silvia, just go ahead, introduce yourself. Who are you? What are you doing? Where are you from? I want to know everything.
So, this is Silvia, originally Spanish, some kind of a chameleon, I would say. A lot of people would think that I am from other places, but I'm actually a Spanish girl who came to Germany at almost 9 years now. It's been a while. I first came to Germany for studies, and then after a couple of years in the countryside, I moved to Berlin, which is a more international lifestyle, which is also where I met my lovely husband, who is, as also a lot of people would assume, he himself to be from my country. He is not. I just happened to run into a really nice man from Yemen.
A few years ago, yeah. What I like about your story, I mean, obviously we've talked before a little bit, is that you love to get to know basically people from all around the world, and this is what you start doing when coming to Berlin. You told me that you start working with refugees. So can you tell a little bit more about that? What exactly brought you to Germany? What happened after you finished your studies, and to get a better picture of who you are?
Yeah, so I would say I've always been someone who was really interested in other cultures, in other countries, in just all the things. I remember when I was a kid, my parents used to take me to this kiosk, and they would let me pick a couple of books to read. And I would always like to pick the books with like the foreign authors, or like some picture there that looked kind of foreigner. I also have always grown up with people telling me that I am adopted. They didn't meant it in a bad way. Mm-hmm. It's just that my dad has a skin disease where he lost the pigmentation in his skin. Mm-hmm. So for a lot of people, I don't look like my parents' daughter, which was then the introduction to maybe she is from somewhere else. And it was good. I've never took it as a bad way. I've been like, oh, well, it would be nice to visit for somewhere else. People from other places that also seem like really nice people. So let me look into those. I'm also someone who I've always loved new languages. I've always loved also from not related to languages, but dance. Dance was also one of the reasons that I first did my first my first international experience, which was 1 year where I was living in Paris. And then after that, I finished my studies. I came back to Spain for 2 years while I was finishing. And then I wanted to do a master's, and because of the situation in Spain, where education isn't really that well supported, especially in terms of getting a job, I decided, well, maybe I can do it away from Spain as well. Would be also nice. And I was looking into different countries. Could have been also looking in the Nordics. Maybe even I considered going back to France. And well, due to a little thing as well called the economical crisis, my mom was like, it looks like now Germany owns us. You should learn German. You're good with languages, so learn German. And she forced me to go to the Goethe Institute in Madrid, and I hated it. It was I could only be a good student for around like the first hour and a half, but because it was language intensive, so 6 hours, 5 hours.
German is not very easy. I do think that it's okay to learn the vocabularies, but the grammar is a mess. The German grammar is horrible. So I feel you.
While I started learning German, I wasn't that good enough that I could do my master's in German. So I was looking for a master's in English, and I found this master in media and communication science, which more or less managed to what I studied. I studied what in Spain it's called audiovisual communication. So in a similar way, then I was like, okay, let's just hop here. It was also a very interesting twist of fate, kind of, because I was applying to these programs and they were not applying. Then I applied for a program with one of the biggest journalism program in one of the biggest newspapers in Spain. It was a private program, so expensive, but still I did the exam, and I went through the final interviews, and they rejected me. And around then, like 3 days later, I got the call. In the meantime, I was applying to this program that I found in English in Germany, and I got a call with them. And they said, okay, yeah, you can come study here, but wait till you get the letter. And I didn't get the letter. The letter was not arriving in the mail. It was already the end of September. And at the end, I think like 28th, not that fast, but 22nd, 23rd of September, then I got the letter saying, yeah, you have been admitted to the University of Yemen now. Be here by the 1st of October. So within a week, like I just called the student housing service again. Hey, do you maybe still have a room for me? But they did. So I packed my bags, went there. I landed in Frankfurt which was still 3 hours by train to where my university was, because my university was in the middle of nowhere, the state of Thüringen. And at that time and that night, the whole day, my phone was ringing, but I was ignoring it. And then at that night, I go through my email and I see an email from this newspaper telling me like, oh, we actually would still like to accept you. Do you want to come back? And I was thought, no, I am in Germany now. Let me stay in Germany. And that's what I did. So the next day I took my train to this nice countryside town called Ilmenau, and I was studying there in English. And the funny thing is that it was for how much German it is in a way. Definitely, it's not an area that is particularly famous around. Definitely, it's not famous for foreigners, and even Germans don't seem to care about this area that much. Just a very agricultural environment. Lovely, very, very greens, lots of hills, and we were one of the only English programs for the whole university. So all of the international students kind of bundled up together. Mm-hmm. And also because it was a very small university, then there was not, and a very small city, there were not that many Spanish people. Mm-hmm. So it took me several months to even meet Spanish people there. I just bottled up with different people from India, from Pakistan, from Ukraine. I had also a lot of the remainders of my time in Paris, where I actually learned Russian. So my first years around in this university, every now and then I would speak Russian to people. And I definitely, when I first arrived to Germany, I was way happier to speak in Russian than to speak in German, which is always a little bit of a funny edge for someone coming from Spain. And and yes, then after I finished my studies, I was still a little bit unsure if how to stay in Germany. So I decided to take advantage of the fact that I was still a student, and I took a course. It's called German for Studies. So for people who want to study in the university, and then that was kind of what first gave me the confidence to start talking in German, because at the time I had made a couple of friends who didn't speak English, which was the best thing you can do to be forced to only speak in the language that you have in common. So I then started learning German, and I started to apply for other jobs. It was quite clear that for an international person, the German who wants to mostly work around marketing, communication, German countryside was not as good. So I decided I gotta get to a big city, and I ended up finding a startup that wanted to take me in. Mm-hmm. So that's how I moved to Berlin. And in the meantime, so first I moved to Berlin, and I moved to the flat of a friend, of someone who went to high school with one of my only German friend in my university, and they had studied together in Shanghai. She was German as well. So that's where I landed first. And then I started just going around Berlin in this very, very much of a different environment. And I was then using apps like Couchsurfing, who at the time had this like very neat meet me function, where you could tell to everyone within like a 2-kilometer radius, like, oh, I want to go out for a beer, and people could join. And so I started meeting different people, and time came where I hated the place where I was living. And I saw one day, it was a little after the attack in the Christmas market in Berlin. Mm-hmm. This was quite some years after the first refugee crisis had come to Germany. And I saw a post from this lady in Facebook who was complaining about there had been some revenge police searches within the refugee camp in the airport in Tempelhof, and how they have this association to support the families living there, and that they were looking for people to come with them and join their association. And the name of her association was Give Something Back to Berlin, Open Art Shelter. And as someone coming from a dance background, I really sympathize with this idea of an art shelter. And plus, also, just something inside me thought, oh, I've always been not very good with kids, so maybe let's throw myself in a room full of kids and see if I can swim. So,
Which year was that? How long ago?
This was, let me get around 2016.
Mm-hmm. So 5 years ago, approximately. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I was then at the time, maybe just to give a little bit of context for people who don't know, Berlin has this old airport which used to be used during the Nazi times, and it's empty. So they were using a lot of the buildings there to house people coming in, applying for asylum. So a lot of people were living there. They put like this kind of cubicles inside of the hangar, and that's where the people were living. So just in no ceiling, no door, put like a sheet or something like that there. And some associations similar to mine would come in and would do activities with the kids. So we had what they called the women's room, was one of the places where at least there was a door and there was and more manageable ceiling for people to be in. And that's where we used to do activities with the kids. Mostly they were Syrian and Afghan families, and since at the time I was also doing some Bollywood shows, so I initially came in with the idea that, oh, I'm gonna teach these kids Bollywood dancing. Well, not like I'm going to teach them, but more like, yeah, we are gonna play some Bollywood music, because it was also not necessarily the kind of environment where you can have a 1-hour dance class.
Exactly. I remember, because 2016 is also the year I still used to live in Munich. And we had 2016 is the year, so just to give a picture, where actually a wave of refugees came to Germany, because Germany was unfortunately one of just a few countries within Europe hosting or trying to host refugees from all over the world, especially, as you said, from Syria and from Africa, that crossed the ocean. And it's like there are so many heartbreaking stories, but I remember particularly, and I can only imagine how it was when you talk about like no privacy at all, one big room. There was just like maybe one room where you could would be able to close the door. So I remember one time, so I was in the close to the main station in Munich, and suddenly there was a bunch of people walking down the street cheering for Angela Merkel, so our current how would you say that in English? She's not a president, we call it differently.
Prime Minister.
Yeah. Exactly, Bundeskanzlerin in German. And they were cheering for her because being happy that they found a place they can rest, at least for a little bit, until they knew where to go. And what happened then is basically that all those people had to go somewhere. Like, we had to accommodate them, and we were totally overwhelmed. And what they did is they put them all, or most of them, into the main station of Munich. So it was totally filled with all those people not knowing where to go. It was, so they tried to structure it somehow. But obviously, like, how can you prepare for something like this? So I can, with the pictures you're giving me right now, I can pretty much associate, because I remember the day, and it was very emotional, because I really didn't. I was just there, like, visiting a friend, and suddenly those people came from all over, like out of nowhere, and trying to find a place to stay, going to the main station in Munich, cheering for Angela Merkel, being super happy that they found that they made it safe to Germany, first of all, and that they found a place where they hopefully can rest and basically get their energy back, because that's another story. I mean, for everyone who's basically supporting people in such situations, like, all my respect, and for you obviously as well, because you've been there and you weren't afraid to support people, and especially as you just said, children, and you just threw yourself into the water and you were like, okay, whatever, I'm just going to swim. So let's see what's going to happen. But I can only imagine that it was overwhelming for you in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was. We would have girls from any age between like 5 to 13, plus the mothers coming in, and yeah, sometimes the smaller brothers would also jump in. It was very chaotic, but it was also very, very nice in how like a little bit honest it was. I think for the kids, we were a little bit kind of taking the place of the kind of friends that they should be having in this age, because, well, this was directly in the hangar. So it's nothing like, even if these kids were going to school, it's not likely that they're going to have a friend over. Because if you're a normal kid, you would bring your friends over to your family and it's fine. But there you had to go through security. You had to scan your bags. You have to leave your passport at the door. So we were kind of then taking the place of these play dates that the kids would usually have, and just trying to would sometimes take them out. We would then generate general use things to get them creative, mostly with the kids. This is also as well because kids were usually the ones who had an easier time in terms of picking the language. For the adults, we all come in with a little bit more it's not to say prejudices, but we don't like looking. We think we're gonna look dumb if we speak a language badly. Mm-hmm. So the adults were a little bit more holding back because of that. So at the time, I remember I met this couple of ladies who were from the Russian Caucasus. So I initially thought they were Chechenian, but I think they were Dagestani or something. But since I speak Russian, I could talk with them. Mm-hmm. And this was also then there was also a nice thing for them to be able to have like a middle point in between this like craziness of the camp plus the German part of the guards. And I remember she had a little fling with one of the guards, and she was asking me to translate poetry. So she had like this app with like the typical romantic poems there in Russian, and she was asking me to translate them to German. And I was like, oh, I don't know, it's strange. But yeah, this was also a place where I would say I learned a lot of my German, because the kids, it was the language that we would mostly speak. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of volunteers from Poland and from the US. So there were a lot of, we mostly spoke English between ourselves, the volunteers, but it was always in German with the kids, and it was something also a little bit more ground, as a way to kind of ground ourselves into, well, we are in Germany. This is the I mean, I want to say Berlin experience, but I'm sure that it is also similar for the people who ended up in the other cities, that, well, you all come here from different places and you make your way around it. And this just happens to be the language background that this is going to come in.
Mm. Yeah. So for how long did you volunteer for them?
I was active for over 2 years. Then there was some structural changes happening. So the authorities in Berlin decided that we are gonna get them out of these hangars, and we're gonna place them outside, where the planes used to go in the big park. So they built this plastic containers like what you see during construction works, and they just put the people there, which was definitely a controversial point, because for anyone who walks around there in Berlin in the Tempelhofer Feld, it kind of looks a little bit like a zoo, because you have then this little corner with that has a lot of barriers around it, and these little white houses, and that's where they ended up. And this was better for the families, because at least there were no rats around it, but it meant that we had no communal room. So it kind of when the families gained more stability, eventually some of them made it out of these containers into real houses, which would be farther away from Berlin. So I would like to believe that they found a more normal life, plus also for myself, regarding balancing this with my professional life. So I didn't always have the time to be there during activities in the evening, but that's where I was doing. I think I pretty much between 2016 till like about 2 years ago, I was involved with this association.
Mm-hmm. And this is also how you got to know your husband, which basically brings us to your queer love story. Because what I do think, as mentioned before, it's you're just so open towards other cultures in general. And obviously, since you're little, you were already interested in, and also the fact that you're not afraid just to jump into it and to get to know more about it and to learn more about other cultures, also to get in touch with refugees, to get to know them better, their stories, because obviously they do bring a story with them as well, leaving their country, hoping to live a better life. I mean, it's very emotional already, and but basically to get back to the topic, being always interested in other cultures, suddenly your future husband, was standing in front of you. and you met him through this organization.
Yeah, I met him at an event that we took the kids into. So for myself, this kind of activities have always placed me at the family side, at a very much intentional background side. I usually would also make an effort to not look very foreign when I was with them. So I would try to not speak that much English. As comparison with the other Polish volunteers, it was easier for me because I'm not blonde. So people would think that, oh, she comes with them. So for him, he has been in Germany for much longer than I was. And he initially came here for studies to be an engineer. Eventually decided that engineering wasn't really his thing, so he switched and he started working as a freelancer, as a language teacher. And that's a little bit where the crisis found him, at the translator side. So he then took advantage of that, and this was also, in terms of the crisis and linguistically, kind of good for him, because sometimes for some materials where they wanted to translate the information that Syrian people were given, they sometimes would prefer someone who was not from Syria, so that the interviewer would not feel like this person is going to judge them, that this person is potentially has one political side or the other one. So my husband comes from Yemen, which is a country that didn't have any side to play with this recent conflicts. So for him, he still comes onto this world as pretty much of an outsider, who just happens to speak Arabic, but is mostly living a very, very German life. So when I met him, for me he was, yeah, to say, one of the Germans. I initially, when we met, I didn't think much about it. I was mostly just focused on the kids, and we met, we exchanged contacts, and didn't think much about it. It wasn't necessarily like, yeah, I must marry this man. I just thought, oh, he's a very nice man. And then we kept on talking, and he told me that he would like to find someone to help him practice his English. And and he told me, yeah, I'm an Arabic teacher. And I thought, well, cool. I've always at this time I could maybe speak like a couple of words of Arabic, and I always had people thinking that I speak Arabic. So I thought, okay, fine, let's make a tandem. I will help you with your English, and you will help me with Arabic. So that's how we decided to meet. And the first time we met, then we arranged to meet in this cafe, like as an official meetup. Of course, we have met earlier, and I came into the cafe, and I was distracted. I guess it was very Spanish of myself. So he stood up, and I greeted him with like 2 kisses. And the cheek, like it's normal to do in Spain. And right after I did that, I just remember like, oh, he is from Yemen. I think I should not have done that.
Other culture.
Yeah, I was like, oops, and they're not the ones that you greet like this. And he saw that. He saw it in my eyes that I realized that I have made a mistake, and he thought that it was very cute that I recognized that. And yeah, so my husband was always this like it's like meeting this very stable person. He has a very, very calm way of speaking. His German was way better than mine. So I kind of it was, in a way, it was also very, very easy to just keep on meeting him. And I had previously met some people from his country, which was also something that made it maybe easier to start talking to him, because I had no, I mean, it's kind of obvious at this point into this conversation that I was not scared of Arab countries or any kind of stereotypes about that. And yeah, he initially, when we were first talking, he told me that he saw me once in a restaurant, and I didn't see him. He was sitting on a table nearby, and he was with his friend, and I was with some friends who happened to be from his country. And his friend was telling him, dude, there is no way this girl is not from your country. What is a Spanish girl doing sitting on a table with 3 Yemenis? Of course she is from your culture. And she was like, no, she's told me she's from Spain. She must be from Spain. So there was, I think, more in terms of talking to other people, what they would notice, this difference of being from Yemen and being from Spain. But between us, we always kind of we really found very, very easy a middle way between it. So he likes to say my German at the time was adorably very bad. I have a different opinion, but we have come all this way speaking only German, and we still got married. So there has to be some romance about it.
About the German language?
About both things.
No, but I just like the fact a lot that you found a way of communication from the beginning, and that it never felt awkward. And that you basically just went with the flow, and you got to know each other. And where was the point where you both realized, or maybe he realized first, or maybe you realized first, that you've fallen in love? So is there an actual moment where you look back and you were like, okay, that was the moment where we felt like we belong together?
Well, he realized it first.
Mhm.
So he claims that since the very beginning he was interested in me. I didn't see it at the beginning. I was just thinking like, oh, I always saw him as a great guy, and there was a time then it came to the moment he was helping me with moving into a new room, and we went to a visit to IKEA, and like he helped me with a transporter, and the person thought that we were a couple, and he said he asked if we were a couple, and he said no, we're not. And it made it kind of awkward because we were in the same transporter. So after we came to my place, I told him, oh, you could have just lied, it's okay. And he said, yeah, but it would mean so much for me if we were together that I just cannot lie about that. And I remember really being like, oh, you're so cute. So it took me a couple of moments of being like, wow, you're really cute, you're such a good, stable person. I can see that you would be an amazing partner. And then I just thought, well, if I really think you'll be an amazing partner, I actually do want a great partner. So sounds like a match. So yeah, it was maybe it doesn't sound very, very flashy, but it was something where it just matched. It was just easy talking to him, and we had so similar hobbies, similar things we enjoyed. Whenever we met, we always ended up being together for way more hours that we thought about. So he asked me on a date, and I said no. I said I would like for us just to meet as a friend, and but then we kept on meeting, and I really thought, oh, you you would be great. And I told him, yeah. And there was one time when I was sick, and he came to see me, and after we partied that night, he told me like, oh, we can take this as slow as you want. No problem. And I remember closing the door behind me and like having this like butterfliesy feeling for the first time that, oh, I really think we should be into a relationship, because this is all just too amazing to pass on. Like it's not about the like bad guy kind of love and like bad boy sexy feeling. It's more about like I really would like to be together. You sound like a great partner, and we can do it. We're spending all these hours together. Let's do it. So that's a little bit how we came together.
How much time did it take from first seeing him, having like a small talk, and then getting together? How many months were in between?
Well, he likes to say it was 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was less, but he always says, you made me run after you for 2 months.
Okay.
So let's take the 2 months.
So approximately 2 months. But from there on, which year was that?
This was in 2018.
2018. So that was, let me count, 3 years ago.
3 years ago, yeah.
And then from there on, everything went quite quick. I mean, now you're married, you're living together. So what happened afterwards?
Yeah, so it was, we started with having very good luck in terms of this milestone. So I was spending a lot of time. We were, of course, living separately, and I was spending a lot of time with him. And he asked me, he said he would like to search for a new place. Would I like to move in with him? I said yes, but I was thinking in my mind, in Berlin, it always takes months for someone to find a place. So I was thinking, we are going to move in together maybe in 6 months. And 2 weeks later, he found a place. So it was the second place we went to visit, and he got a place. So we just moved in, and it was definitely a lot easier than expected. And it is still, happy to report, really easy. We're going through the lockdown just fine. We're still in the same place. And yeah, it was just good.
Mm-hmm. How would you describe your husband? You already said that he is a very solid person. So he is like, is there a word, or if you would describe him in one word, what would it be?
um Yeah,
That's a
that's a
tricky
hard
one.
question. That's a really tricky one. I mean, I would say he's a very comfortable, calming person.
Mhm.
He is just he genuinely cares about other people, and he will get out of his way to help other people, and he just does it because that is what he believes in. So he is always the kind of person that you can count on for help, and he doesn't have any kind of ulterior motives. He's really very much a man of his word in this sense. So even if he definitely would keep his word. He is very kind, very gentle. He's never forceful, and he tries to understand other people, even if even if they have different thoughts than him, different impressions. Like he's not the one that would like scream or get into be aggressive with others. He just doesn't have it in him. He's so great.
So he's a very patient person as well with
Yes.
everything.
Yeah, I think it comes with him being a teacher. Like
Mm-hmm.
this, like very calm manner, and I'm also, my parents are teachers as well, so I recognize this like pedagogical thing in him.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I've never thought that way, that teachers actually, yeah, but that's true. That's true. And so, as you said, you got to know each other in 2018. You moved together quite quick. Suddenly you fell in love as well, or maybe you just didn't realize before. And then when this conversation came up, you were like, yeah, he's actually the perfect partner for me.
Yeah.
And how long did it take afterwards until you got married, until he proposed and then you got married?
Yeah, we got married within a year of
Mhm.
being together. A little bit more than that, but we started talking about marriage within the year. It was, of course, from talking to doing. We initially expected a way longer period as well, just because of the situation in terms of the paperwork looking very complicated.
Mhm.
But eventually, at the end of the day, luck was as well on our side, and we ended up going through this much quicker than initially thought.
Mhm. What did you do to get married though? Because why was it so easy? Because I can only imagine, I mean, there are two cultures, and we'll get back to that later, the current circumstances in Yemen right now. But those are circumstances that make it a little bit harder to basically take care of your papers and everything. But what did you do to get married though?
Yeah, so as you said, the situation was also something that really started that we really started this process thinking that we might be able to get married 1 or 2 years down the line, because this was also what the lawyers were telling us.
Mhm.
We had someone coming into us and saying like, oh, maybe it's better if you just get into a car and go to Spain. Like just get married in Spain. But what I learned through this process as well, even I didn't know it. I just thought that getting married, it's about two people who love each other very much and they get married. In no place in the fairy tale did I ever hear that I have to ask my country for permission. Like I always thought you go and you ask your partner's parents for their hand, but I had never read that you have to ask your government for your
So
hand.
who had to ask his government? Your husband had to ask his government for permission?
I had to ask my government for
What?
permission. Yes.
As a European country, what's going on? Why so?
Yeah, well, there is this certificate of marriage capacitation. And since this is at least how this goes in Germany, where they have to say, yeah, you are a single person of your country who is currently not married and wants to get married. And for us, since none of us are German, we had to do this process twice. And so I had to do this process first through my country, and thankfully his country had no particular process for this, so I never had to go ask his government, but he had to come to my embassy and make an interview with that. We had to bring in a friend as well to say that we are nice people, and that's how this went. The similar thing on both papers is, as I said, pretty much the governments just need to say that you are the person you say you are. So you have to bring your birth certificate and you have to prove that you're currently not married in your country. However, this has to be on an international format. Well, for me being Spanish, it was easier. I'm on a European format. So this was the international one. For him, Yemen has no agreement to produce these international formats. So the way this should have gone is for him to go to his country, take the paper, take his birth certificate, then get it stamped by the German embassy in Yemen and the Spanish embassy in Yemen before these papers could go to Spain and then be accepted in Germany. For this little bit of a walk around, we have to add in the fact that Yemen is since 2013-14 in a civil war, and there are no diplomatic activities within the country. So for us, that was initially when I was starting the process in my embassy. I was saying this from the beginning. Hey, this sounds like it's going to be complicated. How do I do this? And unfortunately, I found out, well, at least the person I spoke to in the embassy in Berlin did not believe me. And he said, oh, people travel many kilometers. It's normal. There are some Syrian people drive to Lebanon, which is a 3-hour drive. So, and I had to ask him, no, really, there is no Spanish embassy in Yemen. He was like, no, I think there is. And he opened the website of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Spain, and there he saw, indeed, surprise, newsflash, there is a civil war in Yemen. So he told me, you can do this through the Egyptian embassy. Well, first he still insists that you have to call the Spanish embassy in Yemen, because there was a phone number, even though it said that the embassy is closed.
Okay.
So I told my husband, call there, and he said, no, what? There is a war. No, nobody's going to pick up. I told him, no, you call there. And we called there, and there was a message in the answering machine saying that this phone line had been cut due to unpaid bills. So that phone number, of course, did not exist, and there was not. So, but pretty much we found out, okay, we really need to get those documents. Again, the main problem is that travel to Yemen, and they had to be forced the Spanish government 3 months old. So you cannot have something older, and the Spanish embassy in the Yemeni embassy in Germany is also not allowed to produce these documents. They had to come from Yemen, where the capital is controlled by a rebel group. So technically the inner ministries and things still work. Administratively, they're still there, but it actually shouldn't be part of the official government anymore. So we were a little bit worried about that. So I was calling as well the Yemeni embassy in Spain, and they told me, well, if you can get these papers, get them from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Yemen, as well as the Inner Ministry in Yemen, get them and then you might be able to get them stamped out. So for the moment, another moment of luck came in that one of my students, she was working for one of my husband's students, she was working for the Red Cross, and she was going to go on a mission to Yemen in late February, March. So we decided, okay, this was our window. If we were to get married, someone had to bring us the paper, and she could bring us the papers.
Wow.
Because,
okay.
Yeah, the postal system doesn't really work. Because, yeah, I mean, it just doesn't. There is no open airport in the capital due to a blockage by the Saudi government. So there is no easy way for anyone to get into the capital. That's why having someone coming in from the Red Cross really was our saving grace. So we had my husband's brother going into these places and getting the documents stamped by anyone, and then going into the Red Cross compound, giving it to this girl. She had to fly in through Djibouti, and we were really scared that she would lose her baggage or something, because if something would have happened to these papers, I don't know what we would have done till she made it to Berlin and she gave us the papers. It was a day that it was raining and she had our papers out, and when I saw her walking to us with our papers in a paper bag, I was like, no, if they are wet, I don't know, what can I do, please do this. So that's how our marriage papers got smuggled out of Yemen via Djibouti. And then
may I ask who stamped it after all?
It was stamped by the Yemeni Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Inner Affairs. And then I took these papers and I went to Spain. And I got them stamped by the Yemeni Embassy of Spain, as well as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Spain.
Wow, what an effort. Oh my God, this paper traveled so many kilometers. It's insane.
Yeah, it was full of stamps.
Oh, wow.
Like we also had to get them officially translated into Spanish first. Because there was no way. The Yemeni embassy in Germany was saying, well, we cannot do a paper for the Spanish government. So it had to be from Spain. The Yemeni Spanish embassy, once I was there in person, the person was telling me, but are you sure? You guys live in Germany. Shouldn't you be doing this in Germany? I said, no, please, there are not that many Yemeni people here. I will bring him for Christmas. Just sign this. Just count him as one of yours and sign this. And it actually, doing it through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Spain was easier, and just acting like this was a paper that was supposed to be used in Spain ended up being easier, because when I called the embassy and I was calling, hey, is there any kind of exceptions for countries that are on civil war? You know, bureaucracy and exceptions are two things that don't go very well together. So I had to go my way around it and do it myself, and it ended up working again thanks to this person. It ended up working much better. We had some thoughts about whether, since the stamps came from an area that is no longer controlled by the official Yemeni government, we had some worries if they were not going to be recognized, but they were,
because then they wouldn't have been official anymore. If this would have changed afterwards.
Yeah.
Oh God. Oh, but they basically got accepted.
Yeah, they were. We took my papers. We had an appointment at the Spanish embassy where I had to bring a friend of mine, and she just stamped that it was all fine with us. The person working there also was telling her, like, oh, the guy, he looks like he's a good person. Okay, fine.
That's it.
Yeah. She also recognized that my husband has a very nice person aura, so said it's okay. We'll let you go. And then we had to go again to the German authorities. In their case, they actually accepted the documents directly. But so they just had, but science as well, they were already recognized by the Spanish government. That as well helped, it being another European government. So that helped, and we managed to then just it just got through. We this was around April, so
In
we got through it.
2019, though.
Yeah, yeah. We got through the whole marriage process in around 3 months, which is 2-3 months, which was very good for this kind of paperwork and for this kind of expected difficulties that we thought that we were going to face. So it ended up being way easier than it could have been.
But you didn't get married in Germany. You didn't get married in Spain. Where did you get married?
We got married in Germany.
You did?
Yes.
So I didn't know that. Okay. So after all, you had 3 countries involved. So it was Germany, Spain, and Yemen. So
yeah.
Just to get married, it's just crazy to think about it, because when I think back, when Nacho and I got married, I also thought that it's going to be very difficult. But we somehow found the loophole of getting married in Denmark. If we would have gotten married, for example, in Argentina, would have been possible as well. But Argentina is asking for a blood test, for example, to prove that you're not related. And it's mind-blowing, because I mean, like why? So that would have meant that I have to stay at least for 3 weeks in Argentina, wait for my result in order to get married in Argentina. That basically the result will prove that we're not related. Germany was another bunch of documents, because even for a German, me living in the south of Germany, but wanting to get married in the north of Germany, that was the thing already. And then listening to your story, like a document that traveled thousands of kilometers within a short time of period in order to get married. It's so crazy. I'm like, wow.
And
crazy.
Getting married in Germany is famously hard. That's why some people go the Denmark way. So still, whenever I hear about it, I'm always like, oh, but did you have to deal with a civil war? For us, it was kind of easy, if I don't say all of this story that I said before, it was actually really easy.
Yeah, but yeah, as you said, you were lucky as well that you had someone who took the documents with her and getting them certificated and everything stamped. Yeah. But yeah, that's such a crazy story. Wow. And I guess now the document is somewhere waterproof, protected.
Waterproof, yeah.
In a safe.
Absolutely. We ended up having 2 weddings. So yeah, we ended up having 2 weddings. At the end, we had the German one, and a little before than that, we actually had a religious one. Just I like to say I had it for WhatsApp shake, just to be able to actually send a video in Arabic. And you can see the person here at the end of the screen. We just had a little conversation in German, because Silvia's husband was in the background and decided to jump into the conversation for a while, which was very refreshing. He's a very lovely person, I can say. You can definitely see that I did a great job in my English tandem with him. I definitely did such a great job that my German improved. So I was not such a great tandem teacher after all, but he taught me German and we got married. So all in all, a very successful tandem. Definitely. And you're speaking Arabic as well now, no? A little bit? I try. So he gives me classes as well, and I have my mother-in-law who writes to me in over WhatsApp. She sends me every morning a good morning text. It's
Oh.
typical thing when you're dated. Now it's from my mother-in-law. She sends me every morning a good morning, Silvia. How are you? And she gets worried if I don't reply quickly enough. So at least we speak every day, mostly with her. I have his sister's number as well, but mostly with her. We would then speak in either Google Translate, emoji, hieroglyphics, audio as well. If I'm feeling playful and brave enough, I would send her audios in Arabic. And and she tries to reply, which mostly ends up meaning that my husband has to translate because my Arabic is not that great. But yeah, I mean, I sound like a very proud 5-year-old. So it's a typical like kindergarten thing. It's nice dress. I want water. You are lovely. Have a nice day. This is in general the stand of my Arabic, but
But I mean, this is how you start. And also talking about that, I mean, it seems like you're very integrated into the family in general, into his family.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the topic of family integration is always a question for any mixed couple, and in my side, I definitely can say that I got very lucky with his family. For us, it was never an issue. They knew about it when we were dating. They knew about it when we moved in together, even if that is a non-cultural way of going around things. And they knew about it when we got married, and they welcomed me into the family from the very beginning. And we also were lucky enough that almost 1 year after the wedding, we were able to fly them out of Yemen so that they could meet me. And they are a really lovely family. They are he comes from a more high class background than myself. So in his family, a lot of like people in his parents' generation were already studying outside. So he remembers hearing from his uncle, like, oh, if you go to the Soviet Union, everyone who goes to the Soviet Union comes back married. And the women there, they are so beautiful. Of course, they come married and have kids, and it's a normal thing for them. So for his family, we are not the first mixed marriage, and it's a completely normal situation for them that we met, and quickly enough we got married. And yeah, they're happy. They're really happy with it. My mother-in-law doesn't want me to come to Yemen at all because, well, mostly because of the war. She worries about me, so she tells me, no, you guys stay put here in Europe, and we will just meet somewhere in Egypt or meet somewhere to visit. But at the moment, the situation in Yemen is not stable enough to have us going there.
Is this a topic we can talk about a little deeper? Because
yeah, sure.
It's just like, I imagine, I mean, your husband is living in Germany for quite a while already, several years. And since
12 years.
12 years, okay. And since 2013, there's a war in Yemen. And we've talked about that earlier. And you were describing this situation in a way that obviously he's worried about his family daily. He's checking the news daily. You never know if something is going to happen, when something is going to happen. It's more across the borders or at the borders. But it also happened in the past that there was a bombing in the capital or close to the capital. So can you explain a little bit further the current situation in Yemen?
Yeah. So, as you said, at around 2013, started even a little bit earlier, a little bit on the footsteps of what is known as the Arab Spring, which was a global government where young people in Arab countries started putting their governments into question and demanding for a freer government, for a change in politics. The same thing that it was happening in Egypt and in Tunisia also happened in Yemen. So we come into, they had a president, so they had someone who had been president for 30 years. And of course, very, very much of a dictator style of government, and people were meeting in the streets and talking about having a more open government, and asking about changes. So it comes from what was at the time kind of positive movement, at least in terms of liberalism in the country, ended up going terribly bad when the person who was given the power after this strong man of a president kind of agreed that okay, he will step down. He thought that he was going to give it to someone else who would still remain as more of a puppet government. And this person, he acted like he was fine with it, and then he wanted to show himself as well as a strong man within the country. So he invited some military groups from the north, and these groups from the north initially helped him getting rid into the old style, but they also themselves said, no, maybe since we are here, we might as well take the country now, since they were also a very, very much a very militarized group. So this tension initially starts as a civil war. The officially new president of Yemen flees the country in the north. First, he leaves the capital to go towards the second capital, and eventually he goes to Saudi Arabia, where he settles there as to what is officially the official government in exile, and he leaves the country de facto broken down in two pieces. The north, which has been controlled by these people from the northern part of the country, and the south, which should then now be controlled by the official government. The south himself had a tradition of being independent. They had previously were part of kind of Soviet-style government. They had a communist government on their own, not mixed with the North. They were previously, before that, they were under the British Commonwealth. So the country, they took also coming into this tradition. They have started also saying, like, maybe we don't want to represent this official government who is now no longer in Yemen. We want to go back to being our own country. So the problem between the civil war in Yemen, the problem with the civil war in Yemen is that it is a conflict that is pitching both Yemenis of the north and the south against each other, plus the interest of the foreign countries. So both Saudi and Emirates have an interest in having a government that is easygoing in Yemen. Because of the geographical situation in Yemen, it's also good for commerce, in a way of getting ships all the way from the Horn of Africa to up there in Egypt in the Suez Canal. So for these foreign powers, it's also good to have somebody there that they know that it's going to listen to them. So in my in my opinion, it's, of course, they are, Yemeni people can explain this in a much better way. The main problem is that the foreign forces that are playing a role in the country don't necessarily agree into who they want to support, and at the end of the day, they, even if they make a government that is only controlled by Yemeni people, there are, because of the tensions between the north of the country and the south of the country, it's hard to have a power that is unifying in a way that represents what both of the regions want. And since the country itself as well being very, very militarized, whoever rules both of the countries should also be able to hold military power into all parts of the country. So this is what makes it into a very complicated situation where, if left to their own devices, because the Saudi government doesn't have troops in Yemen, they mostly are doing air raids. So whenever some direct actions are usually more like smaller actions between the border, as you said. But whenever they have attacked something, some explosive has reached Saudi Arabia, they then come and instead of bombing in this area near the border, because it's very much of a mountainous area, not that much people, what they do is to come to the capital and to bomb there. So that is what the conflict now mostly looks like. It's not as there's not that much direct fighting within mainland Yemen. However, every now and then there would be bombings, air raids in the capital. And since we are in this kind of standstill between the north of Yemen and the south of Yemen, if you were to, as I said, just we want to get the post delivered. If you want to get something from the south to the north, it's really complicated, because there is officially a different government there who doesn't want to collaborate with the other one right now with the COVID crisis. The government in the government in the north does not want to agree to the fact that there is COVID even. So they are not given any information in terms of how many cases of COVID is there, and which also, unfortunately, as well mean that they will not get help sent from other countries, because the help is really just being able to reach the south, because that's where planes can land. That's where ships can go, because because Saudi Arabia doesn't allow any plane to land in the capital, or mostly any plane. They have to allow all flights landing in, because they want to control what the people receive, which means that if someone has to leave the capital, has to leave this north region, their options are either to go to the capital in the south, which is around a 10-12 hours drive, which sometimes, depending on how the independent troops in the city are feeling, sometimes they don't even let people from the north enter the city and get into an airplane. Or if they want to bypass the metropolitan area there, they have to then drive 24 hours and go into the eastern part of the country, which is actually near the border with Oman. And that's the second airport that is actually open, and that is how people can get out of Yemen, which is also the way we picked when we had his parents flying into us.
So your husband's parents or your husband's family, or is it right now just his parents living there?
He has a lot of family in Europe, but most of his family is still in Yemen.
So your husband's family is living in the north of Yemen.
Yes, in the capital. Yes.
And we've talked about it when having the pre-call, because the situation is difficult. After all, as I said before, your husband is checking the news daily. He's obviously very worried that something might happen. Um, what do you do? How do you handle such a very specific situation? Because it's nothing I do have to worry about, obviously. I mean, even though if not just from Argentina, which is officially a third world country, but obviously he's also worried about his family, especially now due to COVID. But there's no civil war, there's no war, anything. So it's it's a lot, I can imagine. How do you handle such a situation?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something that I don't have to deal with on my side. Like, he wouldn't get worried if he sees me checking the Spanish news. I mean, not that I usually do that anyways, because I don't pay a lot of attention to news from my country. But if I see him looking at Al Jazeera and like I see he's taking time, I would usually assume that something has happened. And we also get worried if it takes some time for his parents, for his family to reply, because sometimes electricity might get cut off, and you just don't know. And it's something that you kind of just have to accept that we don't know. And like any immigrant who is very far away from his family, you just know that is the way things are. So it takes kind of a normalization. So his parents or his family says, no, we are careful, we are not going out. And he's thinking of it with a very German perspective of, okay, you just make a lockdown, don't leave the house. And but so you kind of have to play both ways. Like it's no use getting too worried from a German perspective, and also thinking like, oh, these poor people, they need a savior, but I cannot save them because I'm in Germany. Sometimes in my part, I will just tell him, well, your situation, your parents, because they're old, they might seem hopeless to you, but the reality is that they have been getting through this 7, 8, 9 years of war, and they are still there. So they do know this hardship. And even if you think they are weak, it makes people stronger. Even if no one can prepare for that. No one wakes up today and thinks, yeah, I think if there was a 10-year war in my country, I would be able to get through it. No one prepares for that. You just kind of accept that this is the things out there as they are coming to you. But I think it's a hard question into how to support your partner whenever there's this thing. It requires a little bit of playing both sides of, okay, no, you of course want to know about the conflict. You want to also know how much of a risk, what is the situation on the land being like. But also you want to protect your partner as well from this situation that is really not it's not under your control, it's not under his control, and it's even not within the family's control. So
Yeah.
you kind of just try to live through it. And there are, at the end of the day, everyone in the country is going through the same thing. So what I think what war means is kind of this fact that there is a because when my husband left Yemen, he was 20, and his brother, his younger brother, was on like 14.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, 10 years later, this younger brother, who has become a man within the war, has kind of gotten used to this situation, that things are not quite all right. So there is not an airport, there is not an easy way to bring things from outside, and such. in inflation as well being very high, because those that can get utilities at hand would just then raise the price directly, and stable jobs, a stable income is a little bit more rare than it was before. So people just kind of get used to this, like, just leaving things from one day to the other.
Because for them it's their reality.
Yes.
Is there, I mean, that's a hard question. This is something no one can answer, but is there some hope, or do you see that the situation will hopefully calm down at some point, or do you see it more like it might take another 10 years?
Well, I don't know if it is going to take 10 years, but the situation would need a couple of steps. The first thing would be that foreign forces stop their participation in the conflict. This is not only Saudi Arabia and Emirates themselves, it also includes some of the other European countries that are in military pacts with Saudi Arabia. One of them is Spain, for example, who sells a lot of material to the Saudi army, and who then say, whenever there is a big whenever that comes in the press, they just said, no, but they are very intelligent guns. They only shoot the ones they are supposed to shoot. So as much as we Europeans just claim to take this thing from no, it's a technological point of view. Things are affecting the life of people over there. So if instead of giving them guns, we would just kind of lead by example or just making sure that the governments get into a room and just say, okay, guys, you have to decide to make this. We're not gonna, you can open the airport what it has. So the situation within Yemen for a while, it's been almost to having three presidents, to having the one that the international community support, the one that is part of the rebel coup, and the one that the south of Yemen supports. So the next question would be to actually listen to the Yemeni people. They have this problem on their own, which is whether we are going to have one Yemen or two Yemens. And this is something that only the Yemeni people really can reply to that, because once we have then a stable government, that is also what is going to make the lives of the people better. The people of Yemen in the last century have lived through several wars when they were then becoming a country of their own, as I said, without Soviet influence, without Turkish influence from the north, and then trying to see, are we a country? Are we one country? Are we more than one? So if there was a more stable government, that would definitely help as well for the people to be able to also stay in Yemen and be able to develop the infrastructures, to develop the country economically into a better life. So they are extremely resistant people. They are extremely resilient. They actually, despite it being, if not the poorest, one of the poorest countries in the Arab world, they actually have a relatively low immigration rate, because so many of them just don't leave. Some of them, if they really must, they would cross to Saudi Arabia and try to get a job there, or come to Europe. But most of them don't. So many of them just don't leave, and they want to stay in the country. They want to do something for their country. So kind of just letting them, I think, just letting them be could be a little bit better, because the rebels in the north as well are having some some influence from Iran, who wants to use them to kind of have this proxy war with Saudi Arabia there, and this has made it that this generation of Yemenis is actually living life that is slightly more conservative than their parents, especially in some if you see pictures of the Yemenis that were coming to Britain in the 50s, in the 60s. If you see pictures of the city at the time, like women weren't wearing hijab, a lot of people were wearing Western dress, and right now it's really completely gone the opposite way, especially in the north, especially where my husband's family is there. If you see a woman now, they do wear a black niqab, a face veil, because that is what what people do.
It's the influence of several countries and
Yes.
the conflict within the own country. So
yes.
That makes it more complicated. It's just energetic to see you obviously all this is frustrating, but when talking to you, I also sense there's a lot of hope, and you're saying, hey, for them it became reality. There's a war and they're still there. They're still pulling through it every day, and the only thing we can do from here is basically to support them, to be up to date, to check in onto them regularly. But in the end, we can't save the country. So especially for people like me and maybe you as well, due to that we are from Europe. So I kind of like to think about that we live in a bubble, because this is how I feel, this is how I feel, like in Germany, like I live in my bubble and I do have a health system. I don't have to worry about anything, there's no civil war or anything. And same with Spain. And then meeting someone who has a family in Yemen, I think, especially in the beginning, because obviously you read a lot about it. You talked about that with your husband. You do have a lot of knowledge what's going on, how the things are shifting from one to the other, why they shifted the way they did. You are part of his life, and part of his life is having a family in Yemen, and you support him by checking on your husband, knowing the story, the background story, and knowing all about it. And it's very impressive to me to see that there is like a Spanish woman that most probably also used to live in her little own bubble, and suddenly gets in contact with all those conflicts. And I can only imagine that most probably in the beginning it gave you a hard time as well. But you started to read about it, you started to ask questions, you started to gather information together to basically get where you are right now, being very well informed about what's going on, and that way being able to support your husband and his family by understanding what's going on. And I can't say it often enough. This is so impressive, the way you were talking about it, the way you were informed about it, and the way you're dealing with it as well as a partner. Is there any advice you can give to someone who might be in a similar situation? Maybe not, obviously not the exact same situation, because your story is very unique, but in a similar situation, dealing with things you normally don't have to deal with in your life.
Water. I would say for anyone who is who has had these people coming into your life from a country that is in turmoil, from a less privileged country, from a weaker passport, sometimes the main thing I would say is just don't pity them. They are just like you. That's like no one countries are not postcards. So even if it on paper it doesn't have the same name, the same resonance as the culture that you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are that different to you. They are people with the same wants, with the same needs. It just things look a little different. So I like to say that we kind of are like guests to the country. The people, it's like someone who has invited you in, and you should be glad, you should be thankful for that. And when you come into a new house, you're not going to start criticizing the curtains, even if they don't look like what you expect, even if it's not exactly how your house is organized. Sometimes just kind of to take things at face value, and to also be able to understand that, well, at the end of the day, it's it's just a curtain. It's just a visual thing. It doesn't necessarily need to take the same meaning than that you would take. Sometimes we like to contextualize things and be like, oh, if he's doing this, this must mean because of that. Sometimes just listen out to them, and just trust your partner. Find this common ground. I think you get used to different things within your partner culture, but it's important to just not put any judgment of value around this. At the end of the day, if we have kids, I would introduce my kids to both countries. I would like to say, well, yeah, Papa's country looks a little bit different than Mama's country, but you have grandparents there who love you just as much.
Mm-hmm.
So just take the people, and listen to them, and try to find what you like from with it. At the end of the day, it's the same thing that we all did with our own country. There is no one who really likes everything that are part of your life as being, let's say, someone living in Germany. You might have some very German things that you enjoy, some things even that maybe at the time being in Germany you didn't realize that they are part of your German life, and then when you go somewhere else you miss them. But you also like other things from other country, and you don't take it that much to heart. Like, I don't know. So one might say, I for my part don't feel that strongly about Spanish food. So it's not something that I love eating pizza, or I love curry. It doesn't necessarily mean that food in my country is weaker. I just like curry. So to kind of, we make these judgments on our own. We trust our gut, and you should also trust that someone in a different country has been able to come to the same decision, to also have this filtering process of the things that you like about living your life here, the things that you prefer to do, and everyone picks and chooses.
To summarize it in my own words, and this is what you said in the beginning, the people in Yemen, obviously they're just like you and me. So they do have, yes, a different culture. They are going through difficult times, but they are also strong enough to pull through it. And you have to acknowledge that of course, they do need support, but seeing it from a different angle, like what you were just summarizing, you're definitely 100% right. And I think this is also something only the ones who made this experience can basically share, can basically give you the feeling for how it really is, And I think it's also important to talk about it and to share the story of Yemen. So I'm sharing our conversation now to understand that, yes, there's a war and it's difficult, and it has an impact on our lives as well, in our relationship. But after all, the people there are fighting for the right thing, and I'm trusting in the process, and I'm trusting that someday everything will be all right. And
Yes,
it's
exactly. I think
part of the country right now. And
yeah, it's part of it. You just have to trust that the country will eventually regenerate itself, and everyone has they have the potential to take the country to a better place. They have done this before, and they can do it again. There is a very beautiful Instagram project called Yemen used to be. This is they have an account, and it's organized by a group of young artists, some of them based still in Yemen, some of them outside of Yemen, and they talk about writers, artists, and things that used to come in the TV, and they make their own animated videos about it, and it's both in English and in Arabic. So the people are taking steps into pushing their content, pushing their culture their own way. So it's just, as you said, trust the process. Don't think that everything is just black and white. It's not just about black veils. There is a very, very vibrant tradition. There is a very vibrant future behind this.
Yeah, no, I'm just checking their Instagram profile as well. It's super interesting.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful. I recommend everyone to have a look at what they do. As I said, they make content in English, and it's really nice. It's also really done by very young people. One of their illustrators, her name is Rofeida Ahmed. She lives in in Malaysia, and I'm a big fan of her work, and as I knew her from this Yemen used to be project, I also had her once. I took the liberty of commissioning a little piece, and I had her drawing myself and my husband, and she drew this picture of myself in this red Spanish dress, and my husband dancing in a Yemeni dress, and she did this picture for our first anniversary.
I found it. It's this one, right?
Yes.
Oh, it's
Yes.
beautiful. And what I love about this page in general is very, very, very positive.
Yeah, there's definitely also a lot to say about them taking back the narrative that yes, there is a war, but they had things going on before, and they had things going after that. So there are a lot of creators as well. There is the Romos Foundation in Sanaa, the capital, that does writing workshops. They do picture photography workshops, and there is also a lot of creators in the south of the country as well. Like, I forgot the name, but there's Free Run Aden they do this amazing, super high quality videos of parkour. So there is a vibrant scene in the country. It is, of course, though some of the projects do share their content in English, it happens in Arabic, but this is as well the language of the country, and this is kind of how it should be for them to take back their own narrative. And even if we don't understand this dialect, it's a very interesting dialect. It's a country that is less that has less international relations than some of the other Arab countries, but it's also something that makes them special as well.
Definitely. It has many faces, though, after what you're describing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
You were saying before that when you're going to have kids, obviously you want your kids to get to know Spain, so which is your country, but also Yemen. which leads us to the topic about your future plans, because you're planning on having a family within the next years. But what else are you planning on?
Well, we actually would like to stay in Germany.
Mhm.
Both of us have applied for German citizenship. So the the goal kind of is to not be an international couple anymore. Although we will always have these two countries behind us, but we really feel at home here,
Mhm.
and I think that while of course every country is going through multiculturalism in their own way, we are in a good place here in Berlin. Both of us have reached the fluency in a way needed to also live an essential German life, or in German life, I would say. So I do speak German like 99% of my day.
Mhm.
I work in German in my private life. We speak German with each other, so I definitely do feel like Germany is home. So I reach before I met my husband, I was more into this expat life that okay, I'm here today, but I could be in this other country and this other country. But after I met my husband, he really kind of grounded me. He kind of gave me roots into Berlin, and this is what then just made me feel more secure that well, yeah, this is home.
Berlin is also a very unique city. So Berlin is like, obviously it's Germany, so it's very German, but you do have so many other cultures as well, which is, it's sometimes it doesn't even feel like part of Germany. So it's outstanding. A lot of startup companies, for example, a lot of cultural influences in general. It's very, very vibrant. So it's like it's
Very
very,
vibrant, yes.
very, thank you. It's very colorful. It's very dynamic. It's like, it's not at all like the rest of Germany, I must say.
Yeah, it was different when I lived in the inner Germany, but
Mhm.
I think this is so a happy medium in a way.
Mhm. It's great to see that you guys are feeling so comfortable in Germany, in Berlin. So up to the point where you decided to take the German citizenship, which I guess was it an easy step for you to take to fill out the papers, or was it something you you were a little bit afraid because that would basically mean on paper, because I don't know how the current situation is, to be honest, if you're still allowed to keep your Spanish passport, or do you have to
I
give it
am
up?
allowed.
Are you
I
allowed?
am allowed.
And your
Yeah.
husband?
He is not allowed, but due to the situation there, there is also no official place that he should give his passport back to. So
After
he
all,
doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't have to give out his passport. However, he has to sign in that if he was to travel to Yemen and something was to happen to him, the German government is not responsible for him
the German government
until
is not responsible.
it's not. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
so like in terms of repatriation or something like that,
Mhm.
that he would kind of travel to Yemen at his own risk.
Ah, got it. But the moment you signed those papers, how did it make you feel, knowing that sooner or later, most probably later, because you're in Germany
Yeah.
still?
later
um,
we signed well, he started the process at the in Christmas of 2019, and it's been the whole year. And we still don't know the answer, but in general, none of us are very very patriotic about it, so we are fine regardless of what the passport says. We bring with us this experience of the other culture, so it's fine. It's perfectly fine. He is actually looking forward to getting a German passport and changing his name as well. Well, editing his name to kind of make it a little bit to kind of make things a little bit easier, because he has the naming conventions in Yemen are: you have your name, then you have the name of your dad, then you have the name of your grandfather, and then you have the name of your great grandfather, and then you have your surname, which makes it for a very big name. So whenever he has to do anything administratively, there is this like 4 big Arab sounding names with a very Arab surname. So he would like to shorten this and only have his first name and his last name, in a way to also have it less obvious to where he comes from, because sometimes if you bring in all these ginormous Arab sounding names, the reaction for people are different. So it's not that he's ashamed of being Arab, but it might not always be the taking point is he doesn't always want to be recognized as such. So as he's lived for 12 years in Germany since he was 20, so he feels also very German, very European. So he would like to kind of edit his name a little bit, just so that it's not completely obvious. So just take the al out of his surname, so that it sounds more continental, I would say. It doesn't sound German, but it at least would make it less obvious that this is a very very foreigner name. So it's easier to. There are a lot of stereotypes against Arab people, especially men. So it's also easier for him to not have these names on paper. It's still easier as well for me, as having a European sounding name. Of course, it's easier, and just kind of to put it into this mix of cultures of German, European, and Arabic.
So that's also your way of basically mixing cultures and part of adapting to a new
exactly.
culture.
Exactly. It's gonna be kind of like acclimatization of things. I think it's also whenever we think about kids and stuff, I don't want to give our future kids a German name. I would love for our kids to have something that is equally pronounceable in German, in Spanish, and in Arabic, but as well, and just to, as well as he likes to say, he would like our kids to be able to get a job. So it shouldn't having an al in your surname would maybe make them even more foreigner than they have to be.
Yeah. It's part of adapting to another country, which is somehow it's sad, but unfortunately this is reality. And if you want to be treated the same way anyone else is treated as well, it's being treated as well, that might be part of the process in order to achieve that. And because obviously there are still a lot of stereotypes out there, and I'm so happy that we talked about that as well. I mean, we were talking here since 2 hours already initially. When you have to know when Silvia and I, when we started the call, I was like, okay, Silvia, approximately 1 hour, and we're talking since 2 hours already. But for me, it's just important not only to share your love story, but also to share your background, especially giving the component that your husband is from Yemen, that it's kind of a special situation you're in. And I feel like it's just so important to talk about topics like this, because what you've said before, life is not always like about sun and rainbows and everything easy peasy. Especially when mixing cultures, you do take two most probably completely different backgrounds and you throw them together and suddenly you do have your own culture, and you have to deal with it and figure it out on the long run as well. And the way you're doing it is just so, I said it a couple of times, but it's so inspiring to see how dynamic you work as a couple, and to see how you you master the challenges in your life, and the way you talk about it, because you do have, as mentioned, a lot of knowledge. I'm so happy you're sharing this with us, and also the way, like, with a smile on your face. So I can see you're very, very optimistic and positive thinking person. And that's just so refreshing for me, because this is how life should be, no matter what. Like, to take yourself back and to be thankful for what you have, for what you've achieved, and you can be so proud of yourself, like what you did in your past, what's going to come next, your future. I mean, there are so many amazing things waiting ahead of you in the capital city of Germany. And it's just so great that we got in contact and that we met through Instagram, and that we're now talking, and that you're sharing your story, and that you're sharing so much knowledge. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. It's really nice to just be able to kind of change the narrative a little bit, or like provide a different voice, even if things sometimes seem a very negative, very complicated situation. Think it's not necessarily a negative thing. When people think of mixed couples, there is always this potential for hardship, and this is always there. And especially when the narrative touches the Middle East, especially when the narrative touches Middle Eastern masculinity, there are a lot of the narrative somehow turns very dark. Turns into a very overpowering concept of clash of civilization, and of course one part doesn't understand the other, and they want to change the other one. But sometimes it doesn't have to be like that. We think if you come to the situation with an open disposition, if you see the good in people, if you find someone who also sees the good in people, it can work out. It's not necessarily doomed to go into a particular route like we see in TV of conversions and dark stories of harems and not without my daughter. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to turn. It doesn't have to be a bad story. Sometimes if we just look at these people who might look different, act different, and just believe in the humanness of it, you can find a connection. And in my case, I found a great person. So I'm happy to share my story.
Thank you so much, Silvia. So please send greets to your husband. And
will do.
Tell him to take good care of you. And I wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you.